special panel. For those of you that are new to the Children's Media Association, we are an organization that aims to connect, to inspire, and to inform all of those working across all the kids and family media verticals. So music to entertainment, to interactive, to research. We feel that our super sauce is the ability to connect everyone so that you can learn from each other and we can all better understand how we can create media that best supports children. So having said that, I will jump into this incredible panel that we have. I'm going to read off their bios because they worked really hard to get all these credits and we're going to give them their due. So here we go. We have Lisa Henson, CEO of the Jim Henson Company. As CEO of the Jim Henson Company, Lisa oversees all television and feature film production from early development through post-production. She most recently served as producer on the critically acclaimed Oscar-winning Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio for Netflix, and executive produced the feature film The Portable Door for MGM+, as well as the Emmy-winning Fraggle Rock, all of our favorites, Back to the Rock, and Harriet the Spy, which we're going to be talking about today. Prior to her current position, Lisa was president of Columbia Pictures and served as an executive at Warner Brothers. Then we have Halle Stanford, president of television for the Jim Henson Company. Halle Stanford is, leads the company's development and production of all television, home entertainment, and digital media in animated and live action formats. Stanford joined the Jim Henson Company in 1993, which I did not know. That's crazy. And returned in 2003 to build the television and digital franchises of the company and establish its creative culture following the sale of the Muppets brand to the Walt Disney Company. We're also joined by Terissa Kelton, who is an award-winning actress and producer whose work has been recognized globally, including at the Austin Film Festival and the Annecy International Film Festival. Terissa is the co-founder and executive vice president of Rehab Entertainment, and her producing partner, John Hyde. She's an active member of the Hollywood Radio Television Society, the Television Academy, Children's Media Association, and Women in Animation. We're also joined by Sidney Clifton. Sidney's an Emmy-nominated producer who has over 20 years of experience as an executive producer, director, and creative executive overseeing animated, mixed media, and live action content. She currently serves as a producer at the Jim Henson Company. She's on the advisory board of Black Women Animate Studios, and on the board of directors of the Academy of American Poets. In her role as mentor and recruiter, she has been a featured presenter and guest at colleges and universities across North America. We also have Haley Mancini. Haley is an Emmy Award-nominated and Telly Award-winning writer. She's written for several shows, including Studio C, Harriet the Spy today, The Last Kids on Earth for Netflix, for which she won a Telly Award for her Last Kids on Earth episode, June Gloom, and for the Powerpuff Girls on Cartoon Network, for which she received an Emmy Award nomination for her Powerpuff Girl episode, Once Upon a Townsville. She currently has shows in development with Sony Konoko? How do you say that? Konoko, sorry, that's a new one to me, and Atomic Cartoons. All right, but today we're all here because we love Harriet, and we really want to talk about this beautiful series that you guys have created that's on Apple TV+. But I think to set the stage, what I'd love to do, I feel like most people know Harriet, but I just think that there's something about, especially because I love reading books, that we should take a moment to talk about the books. So I'm going to read just a little bit about where Harriet came from. Harriet the Spy is a children's novel written and illustrated by Louise Fitzhugh that was published in 1964. It's been called a milestone in children's literature and a classic, which I think we will all definitely subscribe to. In the US, it's ranked number 12 of the 50 best books for kids and number 17 in the top 100 children's novels. So to say the least, it's just a classic in its own right. So let's fast forward to August 20th. We'll go back a little bit after that. But Apple announces that they've given you guys the green light to develop the series. So I think what I'd love to talk about first, and I think that's something that is just inherent to me as well, because I actually worked on another version of Harriet, but we'll talk about that later. What brought all of you to Harriet? Terissa, I'd love to start with you. We did the pre-panel interview, and I know you've done tons of research and everything, but prior to that, like, what was it about Harriet that drew you to the project?
Yeah, I mean, I had remembered reading the book as a kid. And she was just, she's unlike any other kid you really read about. And I didn't really realize this at the time, but if you realize it's from 1964, it's pretty incredible character to have for that time period. But as a little kid, she just was, she kind of had this punk rock attitude. And I just remember thinking, like, this is the kind of vibe I'm looking for. This is someone who's not afraid to be unapologetic about what she does. She's a storyteller, and she writes everything down about how she feels, and she doesn't, she has no filters, which I think is another incredible aspect of her character. And so I just remember thinking that she was an amazing character and someone to emulate growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. The irreverence of Harriet is what always stuck with me. So let's talk a little bit about the journey. Lisa, how did the Henson Company get involved with the Harriet the Spy IP?
Terissa and John Hyde, who are partners, hooked us up with Wendy and Nancy from Two Friends, who everybody knows. And they, it was a little bit complicated to figure out the right situation because a movie was made at Paramount, but Paramount did not have the animation rights or the ability to do this series. So, we thought with like sort of a narrow focus rights wise, we would focus on just animation and animation television series. I was really excited because she is about the animation in particular, because she's a very carefully drawn character in the book. She looks a little younger than she's meant to be, but there is a real look to that child with the slouchy pants and the slouchy sweatshirt and the short haircut, the glasses. And it really hadn't been captured in, as much as one might love the Paramount movie, it didn't capture that quality about her. So, the idea of actually portraying Harriet the way you would picture her from reading the book, and also being in period. Because for me personally, I love the idea of doing a show set in the early 60s, and I knew it would be an uphill climb to set that up, but felt that all the stories that we could tell would be different and unique, and we would, to bend over backwards to try to set it in present day didn't even feel as modern as doing it in period with this iconoclastic child who is like a modern child from today living in the early 60s.
Yeah.
And that felt more contemporary than, conventionally contemporizing the whole thing.
Wow, that just answered a bunch of my questions, but we'll keep going. That's lovely to hear. Sidney, I think I'd love to ask you, adaptations can be challenging, especially when you have such a beloved original source. So as you go on this journey and you guys are like, okay, now we're doing animation, we know where we're heading. How do you, I guess, and when I've done it, it's sort of like, how do you respect the past and honor the future and relate to today's audience? So I would just love if you could speak on that for a moment.
Well, first of all, it was definitely a team effort. Yeah. When I joined as a producer, the Henson Company, Terissa and John, and the writers were sort of already on board and had a very, very clear vision. And it was my job as a producer to make sure we stayed on mission and on vision, being able to translate the pillars, I think, of the storytelling was very important. The fact that we had all of these badass women that we're seeing on the screen as part of that development was hugely successful and important to maintaining those things. And I think, honestly, we just had a great writing team who understood who Harriet was, what was important to her, what she was afraid of, and the kind of messages that we wanted to convey, the kind of modeling we wanted to convey, and also the the arc of the character through the 20 episodes, the season 1, the first 10, and the second season that has just dropped, the second 10. So it's certainly intent, intelligence, and conversation. But we were just very intentional about everything we did and asked questions and, weren't afraid to be courageous and audacious in the kinds of stories we wanted to tell. And, at the end of the day, when we have, Halle was leading the charge as the president of television. So we were all very, very committed and kept that North Star clearly in place when we were doing when the writing was happening.
Love that. Yeah, and I think you guys did a great job. Holly, let's talk about, I think one thing that our audience would love to know, because I think it's sort of a passion project in many ways, because you get the rights and then it's the development process that Lisa talked about. And then there's the process with Apple before they greenlight. And then there's the process, so can you break down for our audience sort of this epic journey that you guys have been on with this IP, just so that everyone can understand, because it's not a 6-month process by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh, yeah, it's not a 6-month
understand.
Yeah, it's not a 6-month process. Actually, the thing that just went through my head when you said that is, I'm glad that I don't have a discoverable Harriet the Spy notebook of all my actual thoughts and impressions of everything that's happened along the way. So I'll just talk about the highlights, which is, yes, the minute after Rehab brought us the books, it was, we were so excited. Lisa and I were so excited. So then it's the search for the writer, the showrunner, to come on board and help us imagine the show, as well as that visual style that Lisa was talking about, how we wanted to bring her illustrative work to life. So that whole process in development, and I'm not going to even include Rehab and 2 friends going after the rights. Let's just put that to the side and say that probably it was probably a 1.5-year process before we even went and pitched. Right. We just wanted it to be undeniable, an undeniable pitch when we went out with it. And so when we did finally go out with it, with Will McRobb and with this beautiful artwork, we had it fully fleshed out, the look, a beautiful Bible, the intent of the show. And at that time, it was like right when Apple started taking pitches. So, right. We could have missed it. Right. I'm so grateful to Apple. And I think they really saw in Harriet that she herself was a real change maker when the book came out, but also would have the potential right now on her own to sort of live the philosophy that they're trying to make happen for kids. From that process, I think the hardest part actually is when you work with the network to get it to greenlight. There's a lot that's involved there, script and budgets, and just trying to make it, not only fit their brand and their vision, but for all of us on this call to stay really true to it. So that process, and actually Lisa and Terissa, I can't remember how long it was, but I'm going to say optimistically 2 years. Am I wrong?
Yes.
I don't remember.
No, in fact, I think it was pitched to us in the fall of 2017.
So there you go.
So that tells you we were greenlit in February of 2020.
So there it is.
Wow.
I got it. 3 years.
Yeah.
I know my thing. So then, that also includes closing deals. Like right now we're going to series. We had to shift gears and look for a new animation company and a wonderful producer, and Sidney Clifton, and an incredible story editor, Haley Mancini, and all of the staff. All of that to ramp up and get going in production took many years. So now you can see there's a long span getting to. And by the way, they didn't just air it right after we delivered it. They were put it on right now. Then they had to market it. So that even took, I think maybe from delivery to the time they were on, was it 7 months? 8 months, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the pandemic shifted everything, obviously.
Yeah.
A lot of time. So what do you do with all that time? It has to be a passion project. Everything at the Jim Henson Company we have on our slate is a passion project. It's a dream project of somebody's, and then it becomes ours as well, that we will stay with until we see it on the air. So we know we're in it for the long haul. That's why we have to love it and love the people that are working on it, right? They're your crew and your teammates and your camp buddies and all of the above. So I think that Harriet demonstrates, this very successful venture from beginning to end with a beautiful group of people that believed in it.
And was Apple the goal? Like once you heard, like, or did you pitch other studios? I mean, I really feel like it.
Fun fact. As you go around and pitch, I won't say who said this, but I can be a little cheeky. That some network feedback would be like, but we don't think period will work.
Right.
Do people really know Harriet the Spy?
Oh, people really know Harriet? Wow.
Show. Like, where's the mystery?
Yeah.
Being solved. We were like, what? That's not what the show's about. So lots of feedback, but you know what? It only takes one, right? It only takes one champion to believe in you. And that's something I want everybody to hear out there.
Yeah.
You just need one believer. And we had Tara Sorensen, who I think is a real visionary.
Yeah.
And not only loved Harriet the Spy, the book herself, but loved our vision for it, loved that it would be period, that we'd be true to the material, but that we could take it above and beyond and build out the world. So, and like I said, they, that whole change maker philosophy they have, I think they felt Harriet would be a good first start on their adventure with that platform.
Well, and I think Tara loves a classic, right? So it fits well in what, she likes to see. But I think one thing, and, knowing Tara, the one thing she always impresses on me is, what is the purpose of this show? So let's ask Haley, writing Harriet. Tell us, if Tara, you're in the room and Tara's asking this question, what is the purpose of Harriet?
Oh.
No pressure, Haley.
Yeah, no pressure.
Okay, that's fine.
We have a writer in the room. Come on.
Yeah. I think the purpose of Harriet the Spy, and I can only speak to, for me, what kind of was a guiding point here. I think the purpose of Harriet the Spy to me always was, as a kid reading it even and bringing it forward as a show now, is to develop empathy. I think that's what it is. I think it's the growth and the coming of age that, when you reach that kind of like 10, 9, 10, 11, starting to get into tweens, your sense of what you do to others, I feel like becomes much more shaped, and you become a lot more aware of that the story that you're telling has other sides. Right. And I feel like that's what we tried to do throughout the show, was that it was not just Harriet telling her story and what she was seeing. It was her telling a story and realizing that everybody else had a viewpoint too. Yeah. And that growth that comes with that makes you realize that you're part of a larger world, I think is something that we really tried to do.
I love that. That would not have been my answer, but I love that answer.
I mean, of course, there's a lot to do with her and all of that, but I think
But
throughout the episodes, as you watch, it's like, her middle name and all of that, and like seeing these parts of her it's all taking parts that she learns from other people, and she builds herself to be a change maker. People, I think it's fair to say that most people aren't born with the perfect vision, the perfect, most optimistic vision of the world. We are all in our little bubbles, and we have to push ourselves to grow beyond that. And I don't know, I feel like that's what Harriet becomes. I think that's what the purpose is to me, and I feel like that's how that aligns with what the change makers sort of thing.
It's interesting.
That's also very much like sorry to interject, but that's really these new episodes that have launched, which are more based on the book than the first set. They are very much about her growing up and getting a new level of maturity, whereas the first set had a very big emphasis on self-expression and the freedom to be yourself, or to be an individual, or to have your own identity. And I think like this sort of identity idea shifts a lot into being mature, and, as Haley said, like understanding other people and not just yourself.
Well, and I think it's super interesting because there's a bunch of research right now about how empathy is a skill that modern day kids are lacking a little bit. So I don't know if that was intentional, but like it really, is something then that I think as media makers, we need to focus on, like, how can we bring more of an, empathy into all that we do. So I loved hearing that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about the books, here's a quote. "The legacy of Harriet the Spy rests on setting the stage for more realistic books for kids, featuring characters grappling with real situations and problems." So we talked about this at the top of the hour, which is that Harriet was sort of ahead of her time. And I think you both, all of you, have touched on how Harriet is different. I love her because of her irreverence. And I think the fact that even the books are banned in some places now kind of speaks to that. But Haley, when you were writing her, how do you balance a kid's show that parents are going to love with an irreverent character so that you get the right mix so that it all works and everyone enjoys it? And even, I don't have young kids anymore, but I could definitely see when my girls were younger, that I would have watched the show with them. So it's also sort of the co-viewing element as well. I'd love for you to speak to that in your writing.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's so funny how she was banned and her books were banned. Also, like, I think Pippi Longstocking has been banned before, and first Judy Blume. And it's so funny because it's what it is somebody leaning into, to your point, the hard points of growing up and finding the thorny aspects of your personality. And I always like to say that, like, you can always do that with a character. You can be irreverent with a character because really what they're doing is wrong, right? They're being wrong in a moral sense at times, right? But you can always do that well as long as they're being wrong authentically, interestingly, and in a funny and individual way. And I think as long as you're being wrong in those ways, we relate to that. That's okay. We've all been wrong. And I think that's how you can work around the irreverence, is that it's like, well, we've all been irreverent. We've all messed things up, but we've all, what makes us still have friends and connections afterwards is that we've done it in a way that was somehow relatable, funny, interesting, authentic to ourselves. And as long as you're within that, I think that it's okay, and it's like they're not two-dimensional, and it's relatable, and you go, well, I'm not going to exclude that person from my vantage point from my life.
I love that. Yeah, I agree too. And I think you mastered that in the show, because you you root for Harriet, you know what I mean? To like grow and to learn and to conquer all these things. So I love that. Okay, so you guys touched on the visual style. And I think I'd love to take a moment to dive into that a little deeper. Sidney, I don't know if that you want to, or Holly, whomever, but I think more than anything, I know it's a quote unquote period piece, and you guys have talked about that, definitive decision to make it that way, which I think I commend and I love. But I think there's also a timelessness to the animation that I just absolutely want to wrap my arms around, and I'd love for you guys to speak about that. Because I wouldn't say, oh, that's 63, 64, It's
Yeah.
like, this wonderful, timeless look and feel. So, Sidney?
Absolutely. Sure. Well, in one of the references that we talked about was 101 Dalmatians. And so in terms of just the watercolor look, the line work, the intricacy of the backgrounds, but also we were being very maintaining our integrity of the time with people's fashion, with the color palettes. We kept everything sort of in a fall palette. And Titmouse, who was our animation partner, did this amazingly beautiful design work that really translated, that where we had characters that we felt really fit in those backgrounds. So, and in the specificity of the detail gave us just this richness that I haven't seen anywhere else. It was just amazingly beautiful. And that, again, went back to like, what is our vision? What is our mission? And how do we invite the audience into this time period without it feeling very, weird and different? So we got detailed. And it was a process, but it was amazing and beautiful, and Titmouse just were spot on in taking notes, and we went back and forth with notes as well. So art development was also a process.
But and Titmouse New York being based in New York, a lot of people in the animation business don't really know it's a New York company. So we had the entire art department was based in New York and went out and sketched and brought back incredibly beautiful, accurate drawings of the places in New York where it takes place. And then, of course, on the writing side, there's a lot of brainstorming about how to really show off New York, whether scavenger hunt and, all these, the World's Fair episode, which Halle co-wrote. It's very exciting.
Yeah, we did a lot of research for that, and it was really fun. I think that was the thing that was so extraordinary about doing it in animation. I don't think if we did it in live action, we could have recreated on a kid's budget the 1964 World's Fair.
Good point.
But we did do it in animation, and that was the sort of the fantasy marvel of doing it in animation. It was a real love letter to New York City and New York City of 1964, both. But I do think that some kids may not have known that are watching that it was set in 1964. Right. It wasn't Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where every single detail down to the shoelace felt like it was from 1964, but there were deliberate details that were in there.
I thought it was a wonderful homage to the publishing series as well, because it just felt like they'd come to life, and it honored it that way too, which I loved as well.
I will say, I'm going to interject again and say that we, with Titmouse, did redesign every character except for Harriet. So, if one is expecting to see exactly the characters from the book, they're pretty much all redesigned for various reasons, but it was a really fun process. For instance, having a design for her famous nanny, Old Golly, we wound up basing on Cher in wait, what's the name of that movie again?
Moonstruck.
Moonstruck.
Oh, I love all these references, you guys. Okay.
I'll also say too, what was really fun about this was working on a team that really loved 90s cartoons. And so we get a lot of people who say this reminds me actually of like Hey Arnold or Recess.
Yeah.
And I think some of our Titmouse team specifically was looking at those references and trying to make it kind of have that feeling as well. So it's always interesting who watches it, and sometimes it's the parents or kids who are watching cartoons from the 90s and they're like, oh no, that's like it's like Hey Arnold, or 101 Dalmatians. I'm hearing references from that are over the decades, which is just, I think, a testament to how great the visual style is captured and what we really wanted.
Yeah. Well, and again, sorry to repeat myself, but timeless. Like it just is this love letter to animation in many ways. Okay, so you have some amazing casting for your voices. So from Beanie Feldstein and Jane Lynch, when did they join the party and how did that all come about? Can Holly, do you want to, or Sidney, whomever, who do you want to share? Or Terissa, tell me.
We can all share. You can't get the cast till you get the green light. So,
right?
We were very fortunate to have also Apple Talent helping us, bring in really top level talent, and we really wanted to get not only somebody that could like deliver the comedy chops of Harriet, but also loved Harriet. Like you just had to get somebody that like it was their favorite childhood, and that was Beanie. So we were very fortunate to get her, but yes, she did come after the green light.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and Jane, I just think Jane adds a wonderful depth to a character, so.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And the other thing, we had Charlie Adler who casted and did the voice coaching as well, voice directing, I'm sorry. And he's brought in some incredible talent, and we actually put together sort of this comedy troupe of actors, this really talented troupe of actors who ended up being with us in all of the episodes, which especially during COVID made the recording sessions feel very much like we were all in a family, because we were seeing each other, fairly frequently. And everyone, it was a big love fest. Like Halle was saying, everyone loves Harriet. Everyone really wanted this to be special. And it's, that's what made it special.
Terissa's so right. When we were making this in COVID, like Charlie Adler was a breath of fresh air.
Oh my God. The bright guiding light through COVID.
He like made you happy. Also, I'm just having flashbacks, Terissa, when you're saying this, of Beanie in her closet.
The closet with her shoes. Her mom's shoe closet. And she would show us like, look at my mom's cool shoes. And we were like, what is this life we're living? What are we doing?
Oh my God, I love that. COVID.
So good.
We learned a lot. We grew a lot. We shared a lot,
Yes, we did.
So can I share the one thing we talked about ahead, which was I'd asked prior to the panel when they got the green light for the second season, because I couldn't find a specific release or a date. So Terissa, would you like to share what you shared earlier?
Yeah, no, it was a 20 episode order. It was 20 half hours. So we knew we had that 20 episodes to tell a story. And so, which is why you have the first 10, which are, kind of extrapolations from the books, but not directly in the books. You have some familiar characters, but then that last 10, it was really, our goal to put in place what, to align with the book and to the original and what Louise Fitzhugh has written. So I think it was, to me, it's a blessing we had the full 20 order, because we were able to really flesh out that character in the first 10 episodes and then really get personal and kind of gritty in the last 10. If for people who are familiar with the book, it follows it almost exactly.
Yeah. No, I agree. That's great. And I think fascinating too, because if you didn't know that, you would think that you were just 2 seasons and that's how, So interesting fun fact, we'll call it.
Yeah.
All right. So Haley, let's talk season 2. We've touched on the fact that it has a slightly different tone to season 1 in that, she's now 12 and she's growing up and we're doing these different stories that are aligned more with the books. But let's go back to the writing and how you evolved the character of Harriet and the characters around her from season 1 to season 2, and what was sort of your guiding light for that, and how did you manage that process?
I think we really tried to Lisa's point, we really tried to give that service to the book for that second season. We wanted to give the first season a lot of exploration, a lot of showing you like how to be yourself, be loud, be proud, all of that. But then to push her through her growth that honestly I feel like everybody remembers so well from the books for that season 2 when her journal was read, and everybody, how devastating that is, but also, how that ends up evolving her relationships. And I feel like that personally, even going back to a kid, I remember reading that and being like, oh no, when it was said, how is this gonna work itself out? And so we really tried to, I think, with approaching the book, bringing that, firecracker aspect of her that we were able to really explore in the first season to the development in the book. So we kind of just wanted to evolve that, grow it even further. But you see her evolution, and I think you really see the evolution of everybody around her. Definitely you see an evolution of it. What we kind of, I think, added in was an evolution of a relationship with her parents, and with her friends. And I think you see, and hopefully you see an arc with everybody as she grows. So yeah, I think that sums it up.
It's funny that you said what's going to happen next, because the second season has a lot of cliffhangers in it. It's probably a little more oriented towards binging, because there are multiple episodes end with oh my God, old Golly's leaving. Oh no, her book has been read. So it's there's a little bit of a different pacing to it as well.
And On that too, the visual style of it, we really start diving into her imagination more. That's kind of how Harriet starts dealing with the process of losing her nanny and having her notebook stolen. And so there's actually, going back and rewatching the episodes, I was really taken aback by how emotional those moments are where Harriet's, she's watching old Golly pack and she doesn't want her to go. And so she keeps jumping into this game of town that they play. And we actually go into it in animation. And it's jarring because you keep jumping back into it because she just like doesn't want her nanny to leave. And it just gives it this like, just kind of a sad, it gets brighter, but in that, some of the scenes in those episodes, they get, it's a roller coaster of emotion. And you're just like, oh my God, we keep getting thrown back in this because she doesn't want to deal with what's going on. And I think, for me, I think that's just a great thing to also show kids is this, we know how it feels like this is normal to feel this way during these moments. So you get some darker, grittier stuff in this new season.
But it's relatability, and you show her cope, and you know what I mean, and you see her grow. So I think it's the journey, right, that we see that kids deal with on many levels every day. Holly, you have to tell us about this episode that you wrote and why it's so important to you.
Okay, I will
about it, but I'm not going to steal any thunder. I think
I'll tell really quickly, but I also want to say, just adding on to what everyone's saying, that 12 is such a special age for kids, and not all of our viewers are 12 that are watching, but you have 1 foot in childhood and 1 foot in teenagehood. And so that first season, she has that foot firmly in her childhood, and she takes it out in second season, and she's stepping into her own, emerging as an artist, a child without a nanny, finding, just like Haley said, finding her way with her friends. And it's a beautiful thing. It's hard. I have a 12-year-old, I know. But for me, getting to write this episode was very exciting because it actually was all about Harriet emerging as an artist. So we were having conversations with the writers about, like, wouldn't it be extraordinary? Like, we wanted Harriet to grow as not just writing for herself, but learning to write for others. And then you'll see by the end of the series, she's writing for the school paper.
Yes.
But we talked a lot about, could she meet another artist who's also emerging, and could they inspire one another? And so we're thinking, what could that artist be? And then I pitched, and I'm so grateful to everybody on this call that they said yes, which was, well, what if it was a young photographer? And my father was a photographer who was very talented and a teacher as well. And he was very groovy. So in the 1960s, and he was friends with Ansel Adams. I mean, he really had a really lovely career. But then thinking, like, what if actually Will McRobb said, well, what if she met a fantasy version of your dad at the same age, and they met and they inspired each other. And that's how it started. So the episode is about Harriet meeting Chuck at the World's Fair, and they inspire one another with their craft and their art. The fair was called The World of Tomorrow. It was about the future. And my father had a heart murmur and ultimately died of it. And he knew as a young child that he had a weak heart. That's why he turned to photography and art. Yeah. And so Harriet kind of unpacks that in the episode and gets him to think about a bright future. And he gets her to also focus on the present and be okay with who she is. And it's a little bit of a rom-com in the fair, even though there's no romance or crush. But so we wrote it in that format. And let me just tell you right now that Haley Mancini is the best boss that any writer could have. Working with that writer's room was extraordinary. And Charlie Feldman, who was the co-writer and the real genius behind it all, we call ourselves Team Chuck. It was really fantastic to work on that episode and to bring my dad back. He's there in spirit, and all of his philosophies on art, we wove into it. So hopefully it definitely inspired Harriet. Hopefully it inspires kids when they watch whatever artist or art they want to do in the world.
And did you watch it with your son? Has he seen it?
I watched it with my family. They all loved it.
And your mom too.
My husband cried because he's a big baby. No, I'm kidding. No, it was wonderful. My mom particularly was very, very moved by it. So,
well,
one of our favorites to work on, Hallie, like the writer's room. I feel like everybody glommed onto that, felt so strongly about it. So it was really fun and such a joy to watch you and Charlie work together to bring it to us.
Well, I love it. I love all these stories behind the stories. You know what I mean? It's just amazing. Okay, one other question. We've talked in multiple ways about how so many people love Harriet, and that if you think from 1964 to now, obviously that's multiple generations. I don't know if it was intentional, but I just feel there's a quality to the show that speaks to all those people that love Harriet. And Sidney, I don't know if you want to speak to that, or Terissa, but I just feel that, and again, I don't, this is more of a compliment, but I just feel like you really hit that out of the park to be able to have someone who read the books or someone who saw the first film, or, now they're watching your series, that it's the same Harriet, in such a beautiful format and such a beautiful setting, written so wonderfully. Like, I just love to know if there's if there was an intentionality to speak to all of those people that love Harriet. I think there is, but maybe a self-fulfilling question there, but I'd love to know.
Well, I think we all spent many hours scouring the internet to see who and was talking about Harriet, what they remembered and what they loved. And I think our initial conversations about keeping it in 1964 New York and keeping it to Louise Fitzhugh's style and to her story is a really big part of that, because that people remember Harriet not as a spy, but as a writer. And often she's sort of portrayed as more of a spy, and it's the cool spy belt. And this was really her as a writer and a storyteller, trying to figure out what was going on in the world, and being a spy was just a way that she could do that.
Yeah.
That also makes for great television. But it's really, everyone really loved her for being a writer and being true to who she is, sort of unabashedly herself. So I just remember doing lots of research and just being like, this person loved her and this person loved her because she was a writer and she inspired so many writers and storytellers. And
yeah, we'd almost call her an investigative journalist these days.
Exactly.
Okay. And then Sidney, one of my last questions. I think it's a wonderful full circle moment that Michelle Trachtenberg is in this season, because that is actually, I worked on that film when I was at Nickelodeon. Obviously, I was incredibly young at that point. Working on that film was one of the first projects I ever worked on, and I just think it's lovely that she's in season 2, and just wondered how that all came about. And I just think, again, for a fan of Harriet, it's just a lovely note in the bigger package of the show and everything.
Well, it was fun. That was also intentional, that we recognized that it would be great to bring her in, and we just had to find the right role for her. And it turned out that we went very meta and had her play Harriet's psychologist. Spoiler alert. And she had a great time in the room as well. But we wanted to make sure that the fits were right, and we think that was a really fun way to use Michelle, and she had a great time and did that role beautifully.
Yes, she did. It was fun. It was really fun. All right, Lisa, my last question is for you. I'm a huge fan of everything that you guys do. I'd love for you to share with the audience what makes a Henson show, and obviously why Harriet is a Henson show. And wondered if you could touch on that.
There's so many. Actually, Hallie articulates it better than me most of the time. But we are all about heart. We're about humor. What's the third H?
Hope.
That's we haven't made a lot of 2D animation, very, very little, in fact. But if it's the right medium for the project, we're going to embrace it. And this is just something I want to say before we wrap up. It actually has nothing to do with why it's Henson in particular, but just something that must be said, which is it is Pride Week, and we're very, very proud to have been putting something in front of kids, which is based on the book of an unapologetically open lesbian writer, which is Louise Fitzhugh, and with so many LGBT people, involved creatively, for whom that meant a lot, and we don't say that Harriet's gay because she's not, she's pre-sexual, you know,
Right.
but we are proud of the show and we're proud to be part of that conversation.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. Doing a deep dive on Louise, it was very interesting. There's some wonderful articles. I can share them after the panel if people are interested, just in terms of her life, who she was. She saw herself as an artist and just how she lived her life, like way ahead of her time, like truly commendable, and someone that you just have to love for what she stood for. Really, really agree with that one.
Very special person with
Yeah.
an incredible legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, anything else you guys would like to share? Otherwise, we will get Kendra back and we will ask some questions from our audience. And thank you.
I will just say there is an amazing album that is now available for
Thank
Harriet
you.
the Spy. And it
Oh my
has
gosh, we had the best music
such-
department at Apple help us with this. It was
so
incredible.
good. We
Yes.
also had Maggie Phillips as our music supervisor and Anna Warrenker as our composer. And they're just, the music's incredible. We featured music from Courtney Barnett, Aloe Black, Slater Kinney,
Wow.
Linda Linda's. I'm
Alex
missing some,
Leahy.
but thank you, Alex Leahy. And we did covers of songs from the '60s. We had rules about the music, and nothing past 1964. So it had to fit the time period. It had to be something that Harriet could listen to. And then we brought, and to Lisa's point, a lot of queer artists to the table to do the music. And that was also very special. And it's fantastic. And it dropped Friday, and everyone go listen.
Wow, okay,
Yeah.
definitely. I love that.
one.
All right, Kendra, questions.
Yes. I actually was gonna ask about the music because the theme song is stuck in my head.
Hey, good.
For watching it so much. But I do, before we get to questions, I'll give the audience a few more minutes, or more seconds to put them in. I do want to show the trailer for
Oh,
season
yeah,
2.
yeah.
So that will give folks some time to put in your last questions, and then also get the that song stuck in your head too.
Yes.
So here we go.
The name is Harriet M. Welch, great writer, good spy, and I've been taking notes.
The best writers can make a story out of anything.
Don't worry, I have a jetpack license.
No, I won't cut my
I'm glad you used your notebook to tell your truth.
Why are you dressed like an onion? School play.
You all look good enough to eat.
At least it had a secret pocket.
I don't want to be, you don't want to be.
And just like that, my notebook. Plot twist. My notebook always made me feel like I could do anything. I gotta get it back. Luckily, a good spy never quits. You without your notebook is like Albert Einstein without his violin. Harriet?
Harriet.
All right, explain.
Stuck in your head because it's such a bop. Okay, I do have a question from Henry. So when adapting a book property, do you have a set look to decide what format it's going to be? So whether that's puppets, live action, 2D, 3D, sort of how do you decide that? And then also, Hallie, your Gonzo painting got a shout out. So
Well, I think all of us can answer that, but I'll just jump in and say we really look to what the story demands from the medium. So with Harriet, as I even mentioned with the World Fair, to actually bring back the entire look of New York, a fantasy New York that kids could have adventures in, and also to showcase the period, the best way to deliver that for this kid series was animation, and also to celebrate, Louise Fitzhugh's illustrations. So it just sort of naturally took on that medium. That's how we approach it at Henson. What will serve the story in the best possible way, but also what is producible.
Was there ever a puppet moment, or was was never? Oh, that's cute though. I mean,
A what moment?
A puppet.
Moment.
A puppet.
Oh, no.
Okay, next question. Again, for anyone who feels to take it, what has been, we touched on a little bit, but what has been the response to this series specifically? Yeah, have you heard from fans? Have you, what has been the response?
I stay on Twitter and Instagram searching for the hashtag. There's lots of love for it. I mean, what I love, and going back to something I think Susie was talking about, there's a cute co-viewing aspect to it. Definitely, there are a lot of parents talking about the show. You know, a lot of parents and kids really love the pacing of it. It's kind of got its own vibe. It's unlike any other show that's kind of out there right now for that age group. And it's also just a lot of fun. There's still the spy element. Everyone wants the notebook. Everyone wants the glasses with no lenses, just so that they can have the glasses. They love her iconic style. Again, just a testament to Louise Fitzhugh and you know how she got it right back in 1964, and it just continues to keep on giving. And the animation, people love the animation. Again, like we were talking about earlier, all the comments on it feeling like 101 Dalmatian and Aristocats, all the way to Hey Arnold, and just feeling like there's not a lot of that on TV right now. It's a very special 2D animated show. That's what I've heard.
Jumping on top of the animation portion of it, like really within our own industry, really highly regarded, just even, you know, nominated for Annecy Awards, just like the look and this beautiful style, illustrative style has really gained a lot of recognition just from our community itself, as well as the audiences that Terissa's talking about.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I'm a fan, so. Another question came in. So how did, you touched on this a little bit, but how did creating this remotely during the pandemic change your outlook on producing animated shows?
I don't know that it changed my outlook on it, but we initially had to go stand down and be remote. Everyone felt like, holy crap. But then we didn't miss a beat. I don't know if you all feel the same way. We were actually set up very quickly. Most of what we were doing was digital anyway. So what we had to do was just be very intentional about what that pipeline looked like. But we really stayed in, we never really slowed down, which was wonderful. Also opened up the world and for us to think about other ways, other productions. But we were on it. It rolled. It was amazing.
Is there
I think it helped. I think it helped though also that we had been producing this show together and in person beforehand. So there was a rhythm with the group. I've definitely been shows that started in the pandemic where you know, the Zoom, you know, writers room had already become a familiar thing. I think it would be I mean, Haley knows, like she had to go from that transition to a Zoom room, and that was, I imagine, you know, hard. So you know, but they knew each other. They had already been together. So just like a really some growing pains with her.
Absolutely. And to just add on to Halle's point about that is, I think it helped. I know it helped immensely that we were all on shorthand with each other, because transitioning to a Zoom writers room is, I mean, it's kind of gotten even a notorious reputation. It's exhausting. It's really tiring. And I feel like there's a true energy exchange in person that's not measurable, that gets lost. And without that, you really have to be intentional at all times and really checked in with each other. And I feel like we ended up being able to carry that energy over and just be really efficient with each other. We're still really, that whole writer's room, we're all still really close today. I think we got lunch last month and everybody met my baby. So.
Nice. I
was excited that there was a writer's room at all, because Halle and I made so many preschool shows with no writer's room. That was just, you know, for me, it's still a luxury to get to have a writer's room. So I thought and it was a great one with many, many talented people.
Well, I think during the pandemic with writers' rooms is the whole Zoom fatigue. So I love that you
Yes.
said efficiency was a priority so that you guys
Mm.
got together and spoke and then go write for 7
Absolutely. It was a top priority for me to make sure that the room didn't go too long during the day, because it's different. Your focus is, as we've all learned on Zoom, it's if you're in a room with people, you can have your moment where you're doodling or looking at the wall, wandering off, going to the bathroom, whatever. But those are brain breaks
Yeah.
that are necessary for you to stay engaged on the important process. And so the way that we kind of worked around that was just making sure that we were efficient and did not keep those Zoom rooms going any longer than they needed to. Get everybody off and writing.
Kudos to you, because not everyone did that.
Yeah.
All right, Kendra, last question, yeah?
Yep. Question. Okay, this is from Magenta, who absolutely loves Harriet the Spy. What are some of the challenges and benefits of stretching this book across several episodes and seasons? 20, you had 20 to work with. So how stretching that across?
I can jump on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think by the way, that's a wonderful question, because I think it reflects all of us entering into and going, okay, we're adapting one book that has 20 half-hour episodes, and how does this go? I think what we tried to do was, of course, pick out the moments that are in the book, right? You want to really make sure that those are serviced. That's decided upon. But then getting to live in the fun, I think was a priority. Getting to live in the fun of her character, because what is it that you love when we're adapting? I've adapted a couple books at this point now into TV series and films, and I feel like the parts where you can sit into things a little bit it's the same as when you're reading it. You wish you could live in this a little bit longer, and da. So we try to sit into those moments and sit into those little lessons and that sort of thing, and let those run. And then, of course, like I said, overarching, hit those book parts. But that's how I think you add moments by doing that.
I love that. Very cool. All right, you guys are fearless and brave and amazing and talented and creative, and I can't thank you enough for joining us today. And also, more than anything, for all the kids out there that get to watch this incredible show and learn from it and grow and be bold and learn to embrace who they are, which is really something that I think is fundamental to Harriet. So thank you for your time. Thank you for supporting CMA this way and sharing your story. We appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.